Welcome to the Art of Living podcast. I'm Zafar Majid, and today's discussion is going to be around the declining health of our nation, or shall I say, all the nations around the world. And with me, I have Dr. Mohammed Salim Khan, who is a herbalist, a nutritionist, and an iridologist. He is actually the president of the Professional Association Iridologists in the UK. And as a practitioner, he's been in practice since 1978 in the UK, and now actually travels around the world giving lectures and delivering on the topic of his specialist area, which is the Tibb Nabawi, which is a branch of medicine specialized by our beloved Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, prophetic medicine. And he actually now also teaches a diploma not only in the UK but the USA as well, where many people are learning to become experts in Tibb Nabawi, the prophetic medicine. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for joining us.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for your kind invitation.
No, mashallah, it's been an honor and a pleasure. And I know we've been trying to organize this for quite a while because these issues we really want to get to grips with is, why are we failing in our health? Why is our health declining? Why is there more disease? I always say there needs to be an investigation why so many people are ill in our society now. What would you like to say about that?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Actually, what you posed is a very important question. And people have asked this question for a long time, especially in UK. That UK was the first country in the world in 1948, as you are probably very well aware, that it provided what is called universal health care for all its citizens. So, as a successful businessman, mashallah, you will know that if a business was established in 1948, by now that business should be very successful. Of course, the National Health Service is not a business, but at one level, it is in the business to look after the people. And again, at the moment, the British healthcare, what is the National Health Service, is in constant crisis, even when it comes to meeting the needs of emergency care. The latest information is that there is a 12 hours wait inside the hospitals when patients have been assessed that they need admission. There are insufficient beds for those patients. Now, this used to be many years ago completely different, but now even the accidents and the emergency care is not able to cope, especially for 2-3 months during the winter time.
You see, just on that point, let's look at the premise of what was the objective when the NHS was established. Was it A, for the prevention of disease and illness, or B, was it for the cure of illness and disease? So they're two totally separate things. So the NHS is there designed to look after you when you're already sick, which at the moment I know and you know that they're not doing a great job of, with what you've mentioned in terms of long waiting lists for appointments and 12-hour waits in A&E departments for even the most minor and even major illnesses.
Okay.
So, let's distinguish between what was the objective.
Yes, you're right. The objective was to take care of people when they were ill.
Yeah.
So there was very little focus on the prevention.
Yeah.
But I think we need to go back couple of steps. What is the basis of modern medicine? Like modernity and so-called modern civilization, what is the kind of basis for practice of modern medicine? And that actually goes back to a concept of in America in 1910 there was a report called the Flexner Report, commissioned by the Carnegie Foundation and the Rockefeller Institute.
The usual culprits.
Which that report eliminated all the natural, alternative, and complementary approaches to health and well-being and instituted what is called modern medicine. And the basis
When you say eliminated, what do you mean? It discredited it?
It discredited them, and then it withheld public funds. So most of them then obviously did not continue to function. And the model in UK is based on this idea of what they call modern medicine or biomedicine or scientific medicine. And really at its core, the ideology is that illnesses are due to infections, germ theory. And this is the basis for the practice of modern medicine. Now, in reality, what has happened in industrial world, 70% or more of the diseases are called NCDs, non-communicable diseases. And most of the healthcare expenditure in Britain specifically, and in America, and in other industrial countries, is taken up by dealing with these NCDs. For example, the range of heart diseases, the respiratory diseases, and diabetes, obesity. Now, what's interesting is that the name for the NCDs, non-communicable diseases, is also known as lifestyle diseases.
I was just going to say, these come across as being diseases which largely can be preventable as well.
Most of these diseases are preventable, but prevention is not the focus of most healthcare systems. And we can discuss, if you wish, what are the reasons behind that, why prevention is really not a significant factor. So these non-communicable diseases are actually the lifestyle diseases, how we live our life. And this knowledge is in the public domain. There's a lot of global research for last 200 years, what they call epidemiological studies. So, for example, you might have heard of the blue zones. This is a concept that there are communities in the world even today which actually do not suffer with these lifestyle diseases.
Okay, where's that?
Well, there are a number of places.
So should we just go and live there?
Well, that's one possibility, to live there, but the other possibility is that we can adopt their healthier lifestyle. So I'm sure you come across this idea of a Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So diet is one of the most important factor that determines what kind of diseases people have. You might be familiar that Hunza is one of the places where people live up to 90 and plus 100 years.
Yes, in Hunza Valley in Pakistan.
Hunza Valley in Pakistan.
You visited that?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very fortunate that I visited Hunza Valley twice and spent some time there. And I myself met people who are in their 90s and plus and hardly any NCDs. There are other places in the world where these kind of diseases don't exist. So
I bet they don't have a fast food takeaway in their midst.
Fortunately, in Hunza there isn't one yet, and let's pray that they don't get one.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, fast food is actually a misnomer in a way. I think we should call it for what it is, junk food and life-destroying foods.
Okay.
Yeah.
So share some of the secrets then of the residents of Hanza Valley as to why are they so healthy and why, yeah, obviously long life is in, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but these factors do come into play, especially even if you're in your 90 plus, but if you've got a good healthy life, then there's some secrets to be learned there, isn't there?
Well, look, first of all, the secrets are really only few, and in the traditional wisdom-based traditions such as prophetic medicine, Tib, Islamic medicine in general, and other traditional forms of medicine, Chinese and traditional societies' medicines, they basically identified 6 things which are the main components or cause of a healthy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is sleep.
Wow.
So people who actually have adequate and quality and sufficient sleep, like for average person, they need to have 8 hours of sleep.
I don't think I'm getting that.
Well, maybe we can help you, to have 8 hours of sleep. Now, this is an important fact, really. Not only 8 hours sleep, 6 to 8 hours of sleep, but to sleep in sync with the day and night cycle. So it's interesting that people who sleep before midnight, if they sleep an hour, they actually get the benefits of 2 hours for their body.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, let's go back to the ultimate source of wisdom, which is the Prophet ﷺ, their blessed life,
Mm-hmm.
and their legacy in the area of how to maintain one's health. So perhaps before I share that specifics, you see, one of the confusion which often we fall into, that conceptually and in terms of our iman, we accept that the Prophet ﷺ came to conclude the journey of prophethood. So from the earliest time, humanity received prophets and messengers to guide their life, not only spiritually, but also how to live the daily life.
Obviously.
And therefore, all the prophets were also actually healers and physicians for their time and their communities. And they were the best healers and the physicians and the health guides out of all the humanity. And this, what we call the golden link or the golden chain of prophethood, it concluded with the Prophet ﷺ. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ are also for us a perfect healer, a perfect physician, a perfect health coach.
Amazing, isn't it?
A perfect guide. Yeah?
And how many people actually look into their lifestyle for that very purpose of emulating it for their health? Very few.
Very few. Sadly and unfortunately, very few. So, the Prophet ﷺ provided guidance in the matters of how to keep healthy. And if we really reflect for a moment that whether it is ritual ibadahs that we want to do or to take care of other people or our responsibilities, it is impossible without positive health. So health is one of the greatest blessings of Allah after Iman. Now, how much do we in our families and our communities focus on that?
Focus on the health?
Very little.
No.
Yeah? So, the Prophet ﷺ, said to the nearest meaning that a strong believer is better than a weak one, and there is khair in both. And
There is hair in
there is khair in both.
both.
Yeah? And really, the Prophet ﷺ themselves treated many patients in their lifetime. They also gave specific guidance and specific remedies for various conditions, which we can discuss. But let's come back to our contemporary situation, where you started with opening that what are some of the reasons. So the first reason really is lifestyle. And as I was mentioning, the top number one factor in lifestyle is the sleep. Now again, if we go back to the prophetic lifestyle, the Prophet ﷺ used to go to sleep after Isha, and they encourage us, unless there was something important, that after Isha we should go to sleep, and get up.
So even in winter, when Isha is so early in the evening?
Well, it depends, which part of if you're talking about Britain, then yes, of course, we will have to moderate and change for that.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a principle.
JJ.
And principles are obviously adaptable. But in general, do you know what's the average time that a person sleeps in UK? I mean, how much sleep they're getting?
I'd say we as a nation, we are sleep deprived.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, just look at in Western countries like the UK, where this concept, recent phenomena in the modern world, this concept of working at nights, doing night shifts. How much of an effect is that going to be having on people's health? No doubt a huge negative impact.
Indeed, yeah. They have shorter lives, they have more diseases, yeah. So, apart from some core services which are necessary to work at night, people who take care. Otherwise, the night work is inappropriate for most people, most of the time. So the other factor which the wisdom-based traditions identified was food and drinks. Yeah. Now,
just on that point, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once, what's the word? I don't want to use the word condemned, but they actually told somebody off, one of the blessed companions, for having a pot belly. And now, I mean, they said that was quite uncommon then. But now look how common it is when you look at people around you, that how many people just have pot bellies. And that shows you that they are overfilling this vessel with the wrong things, no doubt.
Indeed, yeah. Again, probably very well that the Prophet ﷺ said that, the children of Adam, or the son of Adam, referring to humanity, that there is no worse vessel than a stomach, and therefore if people are to eat, they should eat 1/3 food, leave 1/3 for breathing, and 1/3 for water. Now, amazing, isn't it, how detailed knowledge the Prophet ﷺ knew about health maintenance as well. And you'd be interested to know that even the postures which the Prophet ﷺ and the companions adopted when they were eating was such that it facilitated less eating and not to overeat. So how they sat on the ground helped not to encourage overeating. Yeah. So overeating, as well as wrong foods and wrong food combinations, is one of the major factors for what you call pot belly. Or
it's because we have such a huge choice now in the Western world as to what we can eat.
It is and it isn't in a way. I would not use the word Western world really. I would say that in the industrial lifestyle, because these behavior patterns are also going to other parts of the world where the world is becoming industrialized. So it's really an industrial lifestyle which Yes, at one level we have more choices in food, but the quality of the food has been degenerated. So the food which appears nice is really what is called deficient in essential nutrients, because the way the modern farming is conducted, the farming is really destroying the earth and the soil. So although the food looks good, but in reality it doesn't have the necessary nutrient which are essential for maintenance of health.
But has that been done by clear design, this sabotage, or has it just happened naturally?
It's mostly done by design. Obviously, what is called rampant capitalism has overtaken other considerations, and therefore generating wealth has become the primary reason for many of these endeavors, together with convenience. And also, you see, what we need to understand is that this idea that essentially nature is a problem. So you see, unlike wisdom-based traditions of life and culture and communities, the modernity at its core has this belief, you could call it, which is called the scientific paradigm, which is, instead of being a method to help us to assess, it has become an ideology. And it's such that really anyone who critiques is labeled as unscientific or against science or against progress.
Conspiracy theorists.
Oh, yes. You could say that they're labeled as conspiracy theorists. But really, there's nothing about conspiracy here. It's an obvious fact that the roots of modernity lie upon rebellion against God and faith. I'm sure you know that the Renaissance, the European Renaissance and the European Reformation led to this severing of the knowledge traditions which came. Until then, faith and wisdom had a central role in people's lives and in the lives of the community and the nations.
But that's when since then we've had a complete decline in faith-based knowledge and faith-based sort of wisdom in society, and how society is now, again by design, separated religion from politics and science and created a separate category for everything. So in a way, trying to discredit religion and its role of religion in modern day society.
Yeah, I mean, it's only not to discredit religion, that they've done very well, but really to make sure that religion has no part in the life of the nations. And this is important to understand, that although there are many contributions of modernity and the scientific method, but modernity and scientific method alone is not sufficient for us to maintain our health and well-being. Because when we look at across cultures, some of the communities that I mentioned earlier, the blue zone concept, and their lifestyle and diet and how they live and how they manage stress and how they manage relationships, there's clear evidence that those people actually live longer lives, they live healthier life, they're less burdened to their communities, and it is relatively easy for us to adopt those lifestyles. But the juggernaut of dominant medicine and its practices don't allow for this.
So there's some form of suppression for an agenda.
Yes, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons for that. But, coming back to our own heritage as Muslims, I mean, generally we're not doing very well with our health either.
Why is that?
Again, the confusion over not being able to understand and integrate the wisdom-based knowledge from both the prophetic life and also generally from the reservoir of Islamic medicine.
I was just going to ask on that basis, unlike other previous religions, like previous meaning, like from the Bible, the Torah, and previous prophets, our prophet, our legacy is still very, very active. Our legacy is still fresh. Our legacy of the beloved Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is still codified in a book, the Quran and Sunnah. So why are we not resorting to that? And why are we not adopting those practices which have been clearly laid out in a manual for us to copy?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. I think, in my opinion, there are a couple of reasons for that. First, really, that we are hypnotized by the modernity, and it's mostly its dazzling presentation. Don't forget, we are also people who experience 200-300 years of colonization, and now we have a new phase which is called neo-colonialism. It's called transfer of power. So mostly people who rule us, although they are from amongst us, but in reality they serve the interests of the colonialists, and therefore the dominant systems of healthcare in many of our so-called, those countries, independent countries, are still really modern medicine, and other forms of healing and traditions are either discouraged or suppressed. But here's something for us to think about. It's fascinating how much there is a focus and resurgence of what is called Eastern systems of medicine or Eastern traditions of medicine, such as traditional Chinese medicine. As you know, how much in Britain and in Europe and in the States there is interest on other things and other traditions of medicine, such as Indian tradition of medicine.
So are you saying they're thriving or they're...
They're thriving. They're thriving. Indeed, they're thriving. Because again, there is those traditions of medicine in China and India, they're part of the people's culture, as well as their governments, honoring them, supporting them, encouraging them to be available to deal with especially non-communicable diseases. Because the model of germ-based theory has devastated the whole situation and is incapable of meeting the needs of the normal healthcare service, never mind focusing on prevention.
Dr. Salim, I noticed throughout this conversation there is the elephant in the room which we have not mentioned. That is industrial pharma, the pharmaceutical industry, which, again, without even discussing this with yourself, I've had this discussion with many other people, coming even back into the UK, if this huge sort of apparatus of the NHS is not making people who are ill feel better and get better, it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of these institutions are now under supervision, stroke control, stroke pseudo ownership of pharmaceutical companies. And the aim of pharmaceutical companies is not to cure the patient, it's to create a lifelong customer. Because if they prescribe medicine and you are cured within 7 days, 14 days, how are they going to make their money?
Yes, I mean, this topic really is so important. But what we need to understand is that it's not only the profit and the control mechanism, but we need to connect it to the belief as well. You see, we cannot separate the pharma from the modern medicine. Pharma is an integral part of the medicine. And that's why when I mentioned earlier the Flexner report in the USA in the 1910, it is critical for us to understand why was there the reasons for that report, who commissioned it, and what were the implications of implementing that report. So, the famous names associated with that. Their children and grandchildren are still the dominant people who are pursuing various interests in today's societies. But what's also interesting is that really that model is a global model. Some people refer to it now as Rockefeller medicine.
So you're saying that blueprint has been transferred around the world?
It has been
even in the likes of Pakistan, India?
It's been transferred around the world. Certainly in India, although there is a support of what they call Ayush tradition, which is traditional Indian schools of medicine, but this pharma drug and pharma medicine and modern medicine is still the dominant form. It certainly is in Pakistan as well.
Yeah.
It certainly is in most of the Middle East, Africa, and so on. But here's something now, as part of that philosophy and approach, we have a focus now on development of vaccines. And really, this form of medicine, instead of reflecting and considering why we have massive increase of lifestyle diseases, they're trying to find solutions to these health problems through focusing more and more on so-called health technology and specifically vaccinations.
So they're not addressing the root causes which can prevent these NCDs in the first place?
No, they're not, because...
Is that because it's not in their interest, or they don't have the knowledge?
No, it's not because... I think it's because it's not in their interest.
Yeah.
Yeah? The knowledge exists, actually.
Yeah.
And the expertise exists. But the special interest group, as it's called, they don't allow that knowledge, and it's not... and they don't wish to empower the ordinary person to take care of their health, because again the focus is not on preventing diseases, but it's on, like you said, to make a lifelong customer. And unless that is understood by people like myself and you and others, so taking care of one's health becomes an individual responsibility.
I think a lot of I'd say the generation, like my father's generation, they've always had this blind faith in the medical system, where you go to a GP, he prescribes you something, you take it without asking questions, because you think the GP is there to make you feel, to cure you, to make you healthy again. I think it's not, in that generation especially, has not been their sort of mindset to offer that critique and to analyze these things from that perspective.
You're right, that is the case. But the evidence really is now that, we need to reconsider, refocus, and try and educate ourselves and empower ourselves. And also not only educate and empower ourselves, but to go to those individuals and organizations and resources to train ourselves to look after our health and well-being. Obviously, in emergencies, accidents, when there is a need for genuine surgery, we will need institutions and we will need aspects of modern medicine.
Like in the event of an accident, trauma.
Of course, yeah. But, that is a rare situation.
Yeah.
And if we wish to conserve our health services in UK, we really need to take responsibility for our health. Why? Because the evidence right now, and has been for the last decade or two in Britain, that even the emergency care is almost not there. It's very difficult to access it because the system is collapsing. Actually, yesterday on my way to yourself, I was listening to an interview on Radio 4. The British Medical Association's deputy president was being interviewed, and the doctor used the term that our NHS is collapsing, is in a state of collapse. And you notice that how long the hospital doctors, the junior doctors and the consultants went on strike. Yeah? And of course, at one level...
That was previously unheard of.
But also at one level, the doctors are asking for increase in their salaries. But another major reason is that the doctors and the nurses can see the state of the health. They are the frontline workers, so they want to protect the patients as well, and they want to increase the quality of services in the NHS. But again, without becoming too obviously political, it seems that our governments are able to find funds and resources for often unnecessary adventures, such as wars. But they seem to have problem when it comes to providing resources for National Health Service.
Absolutely. So is the NHS on the brink of collapse?
Well, I don't work in the NHS, but the evidence is very clear that unless we change our perspective, one, to encourage and focus more on the prevention, hence particularly the lifestyle, and also to take care of our doctors and nurses and other people who work in the NHS and provide appropriate funding, it is going to collapse. There's no doubt about it. Yeah? Mm-hmm. The evidence is very clear that, unless there are major changes.
So if a patient came to you in your practice, they were suffering from these NCDs, they were suffering from heart disease. I mean, once you got heart disease, it, as you know, goes hand in hand with diabetes, cholesterol, blood pressure. People have a whole assortment of these ailments.
Yeah.
So what would you advise them? Or is it too late by then?
Well, it depends, Obviously, in most cases, a great majority of the patients I see, or actually, I would say, more than 80% of the people I see in my practice have one or more of these lifestyle diseases. And a great majority of the people I can help.
You can help?
I can help. Often it's never...
I was going to say, maybe by the time they've come to you, it's too late.
No, in most cases, if they're willing to change their lifestyle, then it is possible to help them. To what degree depends on their condition and their individual commitment to wanting to change.
Just on that point, are these NCDs reversible?
Yes, they are reversible if caught or if seen at an appropriate stage. Most of these.
So there is a stage where it's not reversible.
There is a stage
it's too
when
late.
There is a stage when it's too late, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So somebody's come into your practice, they're suffering from all these ailments, they've got diabetes, they're on those insulin injections. What would you advise them?
I mean, that,
Obviously, it differs on a case by case.
It differs on a case-by-case basis. So here's another thing. Really, the traditional forms of medicine, the naturopathic medicine, focuses on each person as an individual.
Right.
Bit like, in the circles of tazkiyah, for example, in the tradition of self-purification or
spiritual science,
spiritual traditions, spiritual journeys. Each individual has an individualized relationship with the teacher, and that depends on what stage is the individual, what are the challenges for them, and how much are they willing to work and be guided. So there's never impossibility, but that depends on those. In a similar way, the health depends on that as well.
So each person's got his own individual temperament.
Indeed,
each person. Environment,
yes.
And maybe, things need to be tailored to that.
Yeah, so each person has what we call in the tradition, we call it, each person has their own tabiyat. Each person has their own individual mizaj, which is the temperament. The tabiyat, each person has their own constitution. Yeah? So we say this individual has a particular constitution, a strong constitution or a weak constitution, a mizaj which is, this mizaj, and then the practitioner works with that individual depending on where the degree of health or disease is. So again, it's an individualized relationship. Now,
so this is something they won't get at the NHS if they go to see the GP. There, it's one size fits all, isn't
it? Indeed. Again, it's industrial medicine, not personalized medicine.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah? Although now some of the buzzwords are, personalized medicine. But if you actually look at it, in reality, it's not personalized medicine. It's AI medicine.
Okay.
Yeah?
I mean, I'm sure that's a different conversation. That's a huge topic in its own right.
Yeah. But look, obviously in any conversation, especially about health and well-being, we have to keep the balance that however ill the individual is, it is possible to recover. To what degree depends on the individual constitution, temperament, their kind of willingness to change, their environment. So, the hope concept is a great healer. So, it's always possible to help the individual to go back to healthier health possibility, and really it's not that difficult at one level.
You mentioned something very important there, that individual mizaj, temperament. So there's no such thing as one size fits all. I mean, I'm guilty that I watch a lot of health videos online, and somebody will say, eat such a thing, it's good for you. Eat celery seeds, eat papaya, and we'll go and run and start eating these things, but it may not necessarily be suitable for every individual.
Indeed. I think this is a critical point. MashaAllah, Jazakallah for bringing this point, because while there is now awareness about taking care of one's health increasing, and there are all sorts of influences on the social media in particular. Let me share with you an example from the life of the Blessed Prophet.
Sallallahu alaihi Muhammad.
Once they were invited for a meal, and the Prophet ﷺ took Sayyidina Ali with them. And the host bought some dates for them to eat. And the Prophet and Sayyidina Ali wanted to eat the dates. Rasulullah ﷺ said to them, Ali, don't eat these dates. You are just recovering from an illness. The dates are not suitable for you. Later on, a dish was bought, and the Prophet ﷺ said to Ali, Ali, eat this, this is good for you. Now, Zafar, just look at the depth of the knowledge in this incident, in this situation. Now I ask you, how many of us are aware of this?
We're not.
And did you know, we know the details of what Sayyidina Ali had. And for those of us who are fortunate to know this and to try and understand it, you can see that dates are a superfood.
Yeah.
Yeah? I mean, allow me a little digression for a moment. Most foods which the Prophet ﷺ ate, they are nearly all superfood. Because the Prophet ﷺ was super as human being.
Yeah.
They were the complete human being, but they were also the complete in every sense. Why would they not be complete as a physician, as a healer, as a therapist? But so coming back to the dates, although the dates are superfood, but they're not suitable for every person to the same degree, depending on their mizaj and circumstances and their specific condition. And here you have an example that how the Prophet ﷺ guided Sayyidina Ali on this occasion to refrain from eating dates, which were contraindicated for them at that moment in time because they were recovering from an illness.
Somebody like me would have gone straight for the dates thinking they're good for you.
Of course they're good, but
Yeah.
and again going
That
back,
is what's proper tailor-made medical and health solutions for each person.
and again going back to this to way for us to understand that a competent teacher, a competent guide on the spiritual path is also like that. What a person or a student sees as the right thing to read or to address might be contraindicated for their purification and their development and their next stage of journey. Now, health is no different. Now, ask yourself, really, while we have this depth and level of knowledge and expertise and reservoir that we can share with the whole of the humanity, yeah?
So you see, health is so important that, again, just to emphasize how important it is, that if your health is poor, in decline, it's going to affect your worship.
Indeed.
Yeah. So if you're not able to worship, then that affects your spirituality. And then that will have an effect on your mental well-being as well. So it shows you that this can be the root cause of so many other problems in your life, relationships. Yeah, again, such a vast topic.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
So, some final thoughts from you as regards to especially focusing on Tibb Nabawi, that which, from what I know, until I met you, I didn't, even I myself was not exposed to this specialist branch of medical knowledge, this knowledge of medicine, knowledge of health, and it seems that it's like a lost art.
Mm, mm, indeed. Well, look, I mean, I think the first thing I would share and say that we need to understand that the Prophet ﷺ
Sallallahu Alaihi Muhammad.
were complete in themselves, and the legacy they left us until the day of judgment is complete in itself. So therefore we need to return to that, understand it in a wisdom-based way, acquire the appropriate knowledge and the skills, and apply it to our lives. So that's the first thing. So once we understand that really the Prophet ﷺ has all that to offer us, the next thing then is to start looking at the prophetic lifestyle with a view to understanding what is appropriate for us to use in our lives. So for example, going back to adequate sleep at the right time, in the right way, focusing on fewer foods to eat. Yeah?
That's the secret.
Fewer foods to eat, and the more the foods are near the nature. So if it's possible to get really halal and tayyib food, not just halal, tayyib, which means wholesome. So for example,
there's a lot of misconception around that. Just because it's got a halal label on it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us.
No. So for example, trying to eat food which is organic, which is local, again using things, for example, like honey, buying raw honey rather than industrialized honey, buying, vegetables which are organic and local, or buying meat in moderation, which is really halal and tayyib. So, those few things, inshallah, can help us to maintain this blessing of health. And whatever the condition of the person is, whoever they are, in terms of their chronic illness, there is always a possibility to get better.
MashaAllah, some great words of wisdom there. And final thoughts from myself is that it's a duty upon us all, from what we've discussed today, is to go and seek this knowledge about our health. We seek knowledge about how to make money. We seek knowledge to do with our careers, just to earn some extra money and try and live a life of comfort. But what we don't realize, once we start earning that money, we're using it against our own health by buying the wrong foods and eating them. And then, as you progress in life, you're spending more money to regain the health that you've lost, which you've neglected when you were younger. So it's a vicious cycle, and the knowledge is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And putting into practice those good habits which were taught to us by our beloved Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the knowledge is out there already.
Indeed.
It just needs to be learnt and implemented and basically adopted as a way of life. Yeah. Jazakallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate you and keep this sacred knowledge being passed over from one generation to the next, because one thing that you mentioned before is that with this kind of knowledge dies with the practitioners.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Well, Jazakallah for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts with yourself. And alhamdulillah, I think the crisis we have in the healthcare in this country and globally, I think will is necessary that this knowledge, inshallah, will find itself being kind of revived again.
Inshallah.
And really, inshallah, not only for ourselves and our communities, but also for humanity. This is a treasure, and
Of
this is
course.
a trust for the whole humankind, really. And if we see it like this, then it will, inshallah, through the service, it will ennoble us, and it will help us to serve the creation, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah. May Allah bless you. And Jazakallah for watching. And inshallah, we look forward to inviting Dr. Salim Khan again for a future discussion, because no doubt they have such a wealth of knowledge that there's so many areas we've not covered, which we will do next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.